thanks again, everyone, for being here with us today. So my name is Kaylin Rosenberg. I am the program manager for the Carolinas Collaborative on Climate Health and Equity. And before we dive into our presentation and panel discussion, let's review just a few Zoom logistics. So today's webinar is being recorded, and this recording will be made available on our website after the event. So please stay muted and try to avoid any unnecessary background noise. Having your video on is completely optional, and you are welcome to type questions and comments in the chat throughout the webinar, and we will have a dedicated time for the panelists to respond to those questions towards the end. So today's webinar, we will explore the topic of climate and health risks in coastal North Carolina, including harmful algal blooms. And so to get started, I'll tell you a little bit more about our program. The Carolinas Collaborative on Climate Health and Equity is also called the C3HE program. We are a National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration Climate Adaptation Partnership, also called a NOAA CAP program. We are a multi-institution team housed at NC State University. Our team is composed of physical and social scientists, community leaders, researchers, outreach professionals, and students. Our work centers on building community partnerships to advance climate resilience and health equity. We work together with communities across the Carolinas to help address their exposure to climate threats such as fire, flood, and heat. Moreover, our team's focus is on understanding our changing climate and mitigating the impacts in a just and equitable way. We integrate science and regional knowledge to co-produce solutions that are tailored to meet unique local needs. We focus our efforts on frontline and at-risk populations, striving to support communities that are disproportionately exposed to climate hazards and other compounding social inequities. To share some of this work we've been doing, we are hosting the spring webinar series, and we are really glad you could all join us today. This is the fourth and final webinar in our series, so I also encourage you all to go back to our website and you can see the recordings from our previous webinars. And now I will welcome our panelists, and we will dive into today's discussion on climate and health risks in coastal North Carolina. So welcome Joshua, Ralph, Lisa, and Rebecca. Let me get you all unmuted again here, and we'll dive right in. Okay, feel free to unmute yourselves too. I think there we go. Great. So to get started, can each of you take a turn sharing a bit about yourself, where you work, and your professional role? And how about Joshua? We'll get started with you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Joshua Hollowell, and I'm the Climate Impact Specialist with Albemarle Regional Health Services. I'm a graduate of Perquimans County High School and Elizabeth City State University in northeastern North Carolina. My professional roles include educating the public on climate change, its adverse effects that it is having on the environment, including what actions the public can take to slow down the effects that it is having, as well as I observe changes in the environment for purposes of research, education, and outreach. I also monitor the mosquito population during the mosquito season by placing out traps in 8 rural counties that the ARHS agency covers. The mosquitoes caught in the traps are then identified and put into a database for the state. The species are then counted, and those are put into a database that the state collects. I also occasionally conduct septic system inspections to detect if a system is failing. Additionally, I am a certified drone pilot with plans to use unmanned aircraft surveillance for climate change research, such as making coastal erosion observations, damage and aftermath assessments after storms, and harmful algal bloom monitoring that we'll be talking more about today.
Wonderful. Thank you, Joshua. And now I will welcome Ralph Hollowell. So Ralph, we'll hand it over to you to introduce yourself, and you're still muted, so if you can unmute yourself before, and if we can come back to you too if you need a second.
Hear
Perfect.
me?
Yes, we sure can.
My name is Ralph Hollowell. I'm the Environmental Health Director for the District Health Department. We are the largest health department in North Carolina. I'm also the Solid Waste Director for all the counties in Eastern North Carolina. So basically we go from the coast, which you can probably see in my background. That's the actual ocean. I'm standing out here. And then we go inland quite a bit. I graduated from North Carolina State University. I'm also a licensed soil scientist with the state of North Carolina. And we deal basically with my position, anything the public is involved in, I am involved in. As far as the sewage, restaurant inspections, pool inspections, um, storms, anything at all. And I think that's about it for me.
Great. Thank you, Ralph. And now I'll welcome Dr. Lisa Satterwhite. Lisa, if you want to take a moment here to introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. I work in civil and environmental engineering at Duke University. I studied cell biology at Johns Hopkins and then optics and molecular genetics at Princeton. And then I came here and was looking at the newspaper one day and saw some really serious birth defects that had been suffered by some Latina farm workers. And I thought, I just want to work on this. So since then we've worked together with community groups, outreach groups, and now with Albemarle Regional Health Services. And we're looking at how environmental exposures impact your health when you're young and how that increases risk for neurodegenerative diseases later on. So we've started to work with ALS and algae blooms around the Albemarle region, and that's what we'll talk more about today.
Wonderful. Thank you, Lisa. And Dr. Rebecca Ward. Welcome.
Hey, y'all. So I'm a postdoctoral research scholar. I work at NC State University with the Coastal Resilience and Sustainability Initiative, as well as being affiliated with the Carolinas Collaborative on Climate Health and Equity. And my background is in climate science. I used to be a climatologist for 10 years, and then I did a PhD at NC State in science education. So I sort of wear these two hats, this physical science and social science hats that I like to bring to my work, which is really focused in North Carolina at this interface between the university and external partners, facilitating connections between communities and new research and information to help make better decisions, as well as translating needs and interests from communities to help guide research and education efforts at university levels. I've worked on a lot of different types of climate topics, including with partnering with Ralph and Joshua, and a little bit now with Lisa on harmful algal blooms. So we'll talk more about that.
Let them.
Wonderful. Thank you all. We're glad you could join us today for the conversation. Okay, so moving on to the next question. Can you give us an overview of the current environmental challenges facing northeastern North Carolina? And then the second part of this question, how have these challenges evolved over the past decade, and what are some of the most pressing health concerns related to the changing climate in this region? So how about Ralph and Joshua? I'll invite either of you to kick us off.
I can kick it off.
Wonderful.
So I would think some of the current and most concerning environmental challenges in this region would include the increased growth of the harmful algal blooms that we'll be talking more about today. And for the climatic, additional hazards would be the rise in temperatures, more frequent and severe storms, the rise in the water table and rise in the mosquito and tick populations. And this worsening climate has resulted in more deaths and property loss. And I think the rise in temperatures is what's really fueling all of this.
Yeah.
One of the to just go what Joshua just stated, for us as well, with the intense rainfalls that we're having, instead of just like rain throughout the season, it's like all of a sudden we'll get 3 or 4 inches at one time. And that creates a tremendous problem for us here in Eastern North Carolina. Number one, due to flooding. Number two, you're flushing out all the swamps at one time, and it's going into our streams and rivers, which means all the nutrients are going into the rivers, which is creating algal bloom, the rivers and sounds. And also with the water table issue for us here in Eastern North Carolina, we're running into our septic systems. As I don't know if you can see behind me, but all the individuals that's coming into the beach, I mean, there's just tons of building going on here in Eastern North Carolina. We're right on the Virginia line, Virginia Beach. And because of this, we have to use septic systems. And with the groundwater, the increase in climate change, the groundwater is actually rising. And because of this rising, it's creating a big problem for us, trying not to put septic tanks where the sewage is going to penetrate and get into the groundwater. So we're being faced with more and more challenges each and every year.
Absolutely. It's really important work you all are doing. Rebecca and Lisa, anything you'd like to add here?
I mean, I think that they really covered it. I'll say from my perspective, I've worked kind of more broadly across all of North Carolina, and I think that, you know, we're the challenges that we're dealing with in like this particular part of the state in northeastern North Carolina, you know, we're dealing with the more intense hurricanes, the more intense precipitation, the extreme heat. You know, we're dealing with all of those same challenges. But I think just that unique, like Ralph was talking about, that unique kind of context, right? That we're using septic systems, that we have more people coming, that people are really there to be in and around the water, right? And be outdoors, like those types of things, how that changes our exposure to some of these climate and environmental risks that we're dealing with.
And I can add that there are plenty of examples in the world about ALS and proximity to blooms, usually in freshwater systems. And here we have, you know, the whole mixture, freshwater, saltwater, and then the continuum in between. And we do seem to have too many ALS cases in the region, and that's been going on for several years now, you know, almost 2 decades. And it's just like Joshua said, it has to do with the temperature, you know, that sort of starts the whole cascade. And then you have all these changes and you end up being exposed to blooms more often than anyone else, you know, and this is what happens.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, thank you all for, you know, creating some of those links for us. I think it's all connected in a big way. So now let's focus specifically on harmful algal blooms. Can you tell us a bit more about what these are and why do they occur? What are their risks? Why should we care about these? And how about Lisa, if you would kick us off this time? Or
you know, I'm just not a bloom expert. You know, there's people at UNC that are just international experts on this that can tell us more about the constituents of the blooms and how the routes of exposure, the multiple routes of exposure. But with ALS, for example, it has to do with water aerosols. So the correlations between regions with higher than expected, a high prevalence of ALS and algae blooms, people that live around there tend to do water sports or they work in the water. They've had military experience that involves exposure to water. So it just seems that even though we don't know whether it's algae toxins or, you know, that come from the blooms, or if it's somehow there's some people that study how the algae can be part of your microbiome and take up residence in your body, or it could be just exposure to the actual cyanobacteria in upper respiratory systems. You know, there's all these different things that are being studied, but it has to do with proximity to the blooms.
yeah, great. Thanks, Lisa.
One thing I was going to say too with the blooms, over the years in my career, because I've been doing this for 30 years now, we've seen a more intensifying growth of algal blooms throughout our region. And used to, you may see a little bit, but now it seems like it's popping up. And there was one main river, Chowan River, where they seemed to always occur. But now they are popping up in all rivers and streams and in the sound. And it's as the heat intensifies, the bloom growth is getting worse. And in some areas, it's gotten to the point where, I mean, the smell is horrendous, to be honest. And it's over the, I mean, last year, I know there was an area that Josh and myself went into that we had to wear a mask because of the smell.
And is that smell, as I understand it, it can be from like the decaying algae, as does the toxin smell? Do any of us know?
I know with the algal bloom, with the decaying, that's definitely, I know is one of the factors, but so far as the toxicity of it, I don't know. I know that we just wore N95 masks just for our own protection because, you know, when you can smell something that bad, it can't be good for you.
Absolutely.
And that's something we're actually doing more research on as well, with Dr. Satterwhite and Dr. Ward and all you all on trying to figure out some of what's causing this and what our direction is, the next direction to go.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this team of people has a lot of expertise on the topic, but I know there's always more to learn. Can always dive deeper. Rebecca and Josh, anything you'd like to add about harmful algal blooms?
So they can actually travel up to a mile high in the air, the toxins. And they pretty much, in our area, a lot of the clusters of people over here have been exposed, like with recreational activities in the past.
Yeah, that's a good point. Dr. Satterwhite, you may want to elaborate on this. What Joshua just said, a lot of recreational activities in the water. We're surrounded by water where we're located, with all the creeks, rivers. You know, we're just, no matter where you go, we've got water. And that's you know, it seems like that we do have some of the highest levels of ALS or Parkinson's or whatever. I don't know if you want to elaborate on that or not.
Yeah, I can a little bit. We worked when we first heard about this. I was at a meeting here at Duke in 2020, and they told me about this suspected ALS cluster in the area. So I called Ashley and I called the local, you know, the Catfish Hunter ALS Foundation, and they've been working on it. And in North Carolina, you can have access to death certificate data, cause of death. And so we were able to get that from Vital Statistics and analyzed it and made some maps. And cause of ALS as cause of death or a contributor to death is really increased at in the counties that abut the water bodies, you know, around the Albemarle and Pamlico Sounds. And it's just really easy to see that. And you can see it in a year, and you can see it if you accumulate all the deaths on one map over 20 years, for example. So Ashley had already done that in a sort of a broader way, and then we did it by zip code, and you still get the same result. So there's definitely higher, you know, normalized by population per 100,000 people. There's higher numbers of cases of ALS in this area than there is in other areas of the state. And so then just recently we've started an ALS biomarker study. So we're trying to figure out, is there a blood biomarker for ALS that's associated with exposure to algae blooms, basically. So we've been enrolling healthy people that work around blooms or do recreational activities around blooms. And we're going to compare those to people that don't. And then we've also done the same thing with ALS. And just in there, we give them a neurotoxicity potential exposure survey that they developed at Dartmouth when they were studying the freshwater blooms in New Hampshire. And what we found from that is that people with ALS in Eastern North Carolina, and then the healthy controls that live there, they're far more likely to engage in work around water, recreational activities, you know, and it's just what you would expect because that's where everybody lives. And they also do things like more often serve in the military or do, you know, get exposure to certain industrial chemicals. So, you know, it all fits. It's just we're trying to figure out, is it a trigger? Is it chronic exposure? Is it a single high exposure? What exactly are they exposed to? You know, those are our research target goals.
Fascinating, really interesting research. Great. Well, thank you all. So how are you each combining your expertise to research harmful algal blooms in the northeastern North Carolina? So I know, Lisa, you started diving into this. So if you want to elaborate any more, otherwise I'll hand it over to Rebecca to kick us off here.
Well, I do want to add one thing. Since we've been working with Albemarle Regional Health, we have gotten 3 out of 3 of the grants that we've applied for. I mean, it's just like it's really amazing. And Ashley Stoop is the health director of the whole program there, and it's just been a fantastic collaboration. And the most recent grant that we got is about trying to pilot a certified testing center close by so that, you know, take the pressure off of some of the people. You know, as Ralph says, it's there's a larger number of blooms now. They seem to occupy greater area of the water. It's just a growing problem, and it would be nice to be able to be, you know, have the training and the equipment to go out there and test the water and find out the next day, you know, what is in this water. Is it a cyanobacteria or something else? And what are the toxins? Are they present or not? You know, so that's one of the things that we're working on right now.
Absolutely. That's great.
Yeah, and I can, for I guess like listeners who maybe aren't as familiar, so like when there is a suspected algal bloom, anybody can report to like an online form from the North Carolina Division of Water Resources, and then they deploy staff to come out and collect water samples, and that goes back to like Lisa was saying, like a vetted, you know, lab to be able to test that has the right training and equipment. But it can take a long time, right? And that doesn't really help with being able to know like in a timely manner if we actually have the toxins in the water. So I think that's such a great, I'm such in awe of the projects that y'all are working on together to try to help this. I can share a little bit. So in working with C3HE for the past couple of years with Ralph and Joshua and Ashley, we've done a couple of things really around like how to increase awareness among folks in the region about harmful algal blooms and how to report. So we helped design some signs. I think even Lisa, you were involved with helping get those signs printed and then installed in the area. So, you know, just a really, I don't know, you know, it was nice to see something really tangible quickly come out of that. But the effort was to try to help people see, you know, if the water looks like this, don't get in the water, but then you can also report it. Our team is also currently doing some work around a rapid rural appraisal in the region to just understand the broader perceptions across those 8 counties. How are people thinking about climate, environmental threats, and public health? And so we're hoping that the results of that research can be really helpful for future efforts that we might do collaboratively. And then yeah, I'll stop there. You know, I think it's just really nice to get to work with folks who are already really doing a lot, and to just kind of plug in and see where we can add our own value and expertise to this.
Yeah. And I also want to add our most recent grant, we're also working with Colin Carl with the Chowan Eatonton Environmental Group. That has just been fabulous. They're already working with a couple of other studies, so they're very experienced. So we've been able to learn a lot from them, actually. And she has done a lot of work around the Chowan. Like Ralph was saying, that's been a bloom hotspot basically for a long time. So it's just been, just like you said, it's like everybody was already doing all this work, and we're just sort of helping, you know, but they established the whole thing.
Yeah, one thing I like to just say too is we've got a lot more interest has been generated over the past few years than I've ever seen in my career, as far as the algal bloom, the rainfall, temperatures, everything. We've got a lot of small groups just like you were just saying, Dr. Satterwhite, with choline. We've got other groups throughout the region in Clemens County, Pasquotank County that are checking the water, monitoring hot spots. So we've got a whole lot more interest, and with the signs that's been put up, that's generated interest. You hear more talk now within the community about the algal bloom and about the issues that we do have on our coastal waters.
And Ralph, you mentioned, seeing this growing interest in people talking about algal blooms and groups focusing on resolving the issue. Why do you think there's this growing interest now? Is it because of just a higher presence of the algal blooms? People are noticing it more, or what other factors do you think are contributing to this growing interest?
I think some of the factors is that it is people are starting to see it more.
Yeah.
They're noticing it. I remember years ago when the algal bloom in the Chowan River, yes, it was noticed, but it really wasn't, never pursued a whole lot. And I'm talking about years ago. It was kind of like noticed it was there, and it would go away eventually, or people thought it would go away. And then I think just with over time, more research and with more education that's out there, more talk about it, articles in the paper, just like I say with these signs that's been generated, they're up at like every wildlife boat ramp and other places. I know Joshua, he's gotten in all the health agencies little cards that were made. I think you all, between Dr. Ward and Dr. Satterwhite, and some pamphlets that it's just started generating more interest.
That's great. Speaks to the importance of research and then communicating out that research. So that's great.
Yeah, we do some promotion through social media as well. It's just an added thing. And being a Part 107 remote pilot, like I said in my introduction, I think I'll be utilizing the drone technology and thermal imaging to do more surveillance and location of the blooms in the bodies of water.
And the thing with there's wonderful collaborators at the Beaufort NOAA Coastal Center. Alex Hounshell particularly, and she makes all the daily images which show they've been processed to show blooms. She makes them available to us, and all of us can go to this website and take a look and see what happened the day before. But the missing link is, how do you connect those central water blooms to what's going on the coast? And that's where Joshua comes in. He's going to be the one that makes that critical link, between, is this close enough to a beach or to where human activity is, or is it isolated way out in the middle of the water?
And through the last grant that Dr. Satterwhite got for us, we're also getting two, Josh, you'll have aquatrolls, is what they're called. And that's where we'll actually be able to go out and check the water right on the spot. Now, it's not going to be 100% like doing it in a lab, but it will definitely give us a good idea of what's in the water so that we can make some quick calls on advising the public on swimming or whatever.
That's great. Having the local capacity to do some of the testing and immediate response sounds really positive. Wonderful. Thanks, everyone. So now moving on to our next question. What measures are currently being taken to educate the public, as well monitor and control harmful algal blooms in northeastern North Carolina? And I know a lot of these questions are bleeding into each other. So we started talking about this, the signage that's been posted in the region. But are there any other measures that we haven't discussed that you'd like to highlight now?
I think we've kind of, like you said, we've already discussed this, but really the social media, as Joshua stated, he tries to post something at least once a week. We have the pamphlets, like I say, in each health department, and other agencies is just talking about algal bloom, what to look for, and then at each wildlife boat ramp, and then just having educational meetings. I believe you all, I know we've been involved in some educational meetings where we bring in our state representatives, state senators. That's a big impact for us. We had a meeting with the health department and some of these individuals just to let them know on what's going on with our waters, what we're looking to do, what we're looking at in the future. So, and I think Dr. Satterwhite, I believe you spoken at a few meetings, one in Greenville and some other places.
Yeah, especially with Rick Bedlack at the ALS clinic. We've been giving some talks, just talking about this. And the other thing, Colleen Carl wanted me to mention is that I think we all think that the dashboard is underutilized. And if we could somehow get the word out that the state has developed this fabulous tool where we can report what we see, that day and do another report the next day, just, that would be wonderful. And that's where the signage came in, help people understand what's going on out there just by visual inspection. Do we need to report this?
Yeah, that's great. I'm seeing if we can, Rebecca.
Yeah.
Beat me to it. That's awesome.
Trying
Thank
to find
you.
that link.
Great. Thanks,
Yes.
Rebecca.
Yeah, that dashboard is really great. And what I like about it is, if folks are clicking on it, right, is that anybody can report it. You can upload a photo, right? And the state does, they do respond to it. And you can also see, you can follow it, right? So you can see when it was resolved and what the status was. So, I think you're right that it is underutilized. And I've been fortunate to meet with the folks in the state who are doing this testing and running this, and they're like, we encourage people to report. So just trying to help spread that word out.
And I think, Rebecca, the signage you developed, it had a QR code on it.
Yes, and it takes people to this form to report in. So
in Spanish and English.
Yes.
Yeah, I was going to also add that with the promotion at the community festivals and public events that we've had, with handing out the cards with the QR codes and the brochures.
And one of the harms that we haven't discussed is people are making their living on the water. So they're either, they're collecting fish, they're fishing, they're growing things next to the water, they're running businesses, and some blooms do not release toxins and some blooms do, and some release toxins before you can see them, or sometimes the toxins stay longer than the bloom is there. There's just a lot of basic research that needs to be done to try to protect people that are, and their livelihoods, protect their health, but also protect the people that are trying to live there and feed us and, earn their living.
Absolutely. I think that's a really important point, that there is real and important economic impact of all of this, and finding that balance of protecting health and protecting economic opportunities is really, really important work.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you, I don't know how many of you all can see behind me. I mean, I'm standing here on the ocean front, and if you just turn around just a little bit, see the multitude of people that are out here in just this one little spot. I mean, you're talking about a major economic impact for our region that is being affected all by the water.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're in the perfect setting for this conversation today. So I know we've talked a lot about the education efforts as well as the monitoring efforts, which are so important and necessary. I'm wondering, what do we know about how to control the harmful algal blooms from occurring or occurring less often? Do we know enough about these algal blooms to know what control measures can be taken or prevention measures? Maybe something that's already being done or something that's being researched and maybe could be done in the future.
I think that's where we've got to really start educating the public. I mean, really, there are several different things that you can look at of what's causing algal bloom, but can we pinpoint one particular thing. I really don't think we can just say it's one particular thing. I mean, a lot of times you hear people focus on agriculture, the fertilizers and chemicals and all. And yes, I'm sure that's a contributing factor. But then you have your golf courses that's dumping, nitrogen on the golf courses 24/7 to keep them lush and green. You have your towns, your cities. We have quite a few of those. We have some of the the town of Eatonton, one of the oldest towns there is, colonial. They keep everything lush and green. Well, every time it rains, where does the fertilizer go? It all runs off into the storm drains. And so there's a lot of different factors, I think, that's contributed to the algal bloom growth. And it's just going to take some time on educating people. And we just got to look at maybe some alternatives on some of these things that's being used now.
Yeah. Thanks, Ralph.
And I think go
No,
ahead,
go
Lisa.
ahead.
Go ahead.
I was going to say the bacteria that we're talking, like the algae, right? Like they need nutrients like nitrogen and phosphorus, but it's also like these environmental conditions that can set up to enable them to proliferate into this bloom, right? And so having the calmer waters, the warmer waters, like Joshua was talking about earlier, when those, like being able to monitor and know when the conditions are like setting up for that to happen, I think is just not necessarily to prevent them, right, but just to be able to kind of get ahead and know like where might they be occurring next. It's something that I'm interested in.
Yeah, I think we've also got to look at just for us. I mean, we have to keep in mind that the rivers and the ocean is our selling point in eastern North Carolina, and we've always been known for our pristine waters, but development is a big impact. I mean, every time most of you developers, that's what they want to hit is something that has access to water or waterfront property, because that's what everybody wants. And once you develop that property, then that's where I think it comes on our part as environmental help to make sure that when we install septic systems, in the counties, when the land is developed, that we've got to decrease the amount of runoff as much as possible going into the ditches, and then it's filtering into the swamps, and then it's going out into the to the streams. So there's a lot of factors that we need to really look at as well.
Absolutely. Lisa, was there something you wanted to contribute there? I know we were all jumping in.
I think, Ralph, were you telling me about the program where the state was paying farmers to have a buffer zone
Yes.
at the edge of the crops at some point? And I don't think they're doing it anymore, but that was an idea.
Yeah, creating buffers along your ditches, like 10 foot on each side, letting them grow up each year. Then you mow one side one year, mow the other side the next year. And the government was making payment on that because that would be a loss in crop.
Yeah.
It helps subsidize them for that. And it just helps decrease the runoff into the ditches.
That's great. Well, like you said, Ralph, there's so many upstream sources, and it's impossible to pinpoint one source or one reason why this is happening, but I think it speaks to the importance and the role we all play in being more mindful of what we're putting out in the environment and thinking downstream of where it's ending up. Thanks, everyone. Any other comments on this question before we move on to the next? Okay. So, now let's talk a little bit more about how can local communities and individuals get involved in efforts to address harmful algal blooms and other environmental concerns in the coastal region of North Carolina. What can people on this call do?
Well, I've got an idea. I don't know if Ralph is going to like this. But during this call, I just got an email, and so all of your equipment has arrived, the drone and the 2 aquatrolls. So I think it would be wonderful if people see a bloom in the area either on the satellite or where they live, get in touch with Ralph, get in touch with Joshua. You know, we need to work out a way that they're willing this year during this first year of our study to try to go do some sampling.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a key factor in just doing the sampling.
Yeah.
And of course, the education part of it too.
Great.
Yeah, and I think I was gonna say with other sort of climate and environmental topics I've dealt with, that's one of the big things, like you're saying, Ralph, is just talking about it. So to the people on the call or who may be listening in later, the more that you talk about it with your family over the dinner table, right? Hey, have you heard about these things called harmful algal blooms? You know, this is something that we're focusing today in northeastern North Carolina, but they are the cyanobacteria, as I understand. You know, we get these blooms in many places all over, and so this is very much a thing that we deal with locally too, wherever we are. And so just sort of increasing that awareness, doing your part to talk about it, and then yes, like I will second Lisa's suggestion. If Ralph and Josh are okay, call them, tell them.
Specifically
Also,
for
go ahead.
sightings. And go ahead.
I'm so sorry.
No, that's okay.
The North Carolina State just received a huge 3-year project grant. It's an Ocean and Humans Health, NIEHS and NSF grant, I think. Anyway, I wish someone was here to tell us more about it, but it has a really strong community engagement part, and that'll be something that they develop, and they're going to study microcystins and liver disease and other things, but there will definitely be a really large community engagement aspect to that project, and so there will be opportunities to participate, I'm sure.
Yes, and actually someone just posted in the chat about this.
Yeah, it was
center.
really a big honor. It's great.
Yeah.
And there's currently a job posting for a
Exactly.
community engagement specialist that's joint with that center and C3HE. So I think that there are lots of great opportunities for us to work together.
Yes. In fact, I will share a link to that job posting in the chat. So it'd be great if you all could circulate that job posting in case you know someone who might be interested.
Okay.
Wonderful. Well, I know we've talked about all the wonderful organizing efforts that have been done in the Albemarle region, and what you all have done is wonderful and so impressive. Like I said, do you have any recommendations for how local governments or community groups outside of that region, like what advice would you give to them? How could they model the efforts that you've taken or the projects that you've gone through?
Well, one thing I'll say is I've spoken to some of the county managers from some of the other counties that's not part of our agency, but they are on the rivers and the sounds, just to make them aware of what we're doing. And I do know that I've had one who's actually spoken to me about it recently because he's got a high interest in what we're doing. And he's, thinking, well, man, this is something we ought to be looking at as well, because we do know we've got the algal bloom the same as you all, and we want to see what we can do. So I think, again, educating your county managers, your commissioners, your town managers, their boards, and then going on to the state senators, state reps, all those. If you can get their ear, especially your senators and reps, and sell them on the fact of what's happening, then that can be a big plus for all of us in our region.
Wonderful. Thank you. Great. Well, I'll pause here just to see if there are any questions from the chat, or from the audience rather. I haven't seen any come through in the chat yet, but now would be a great time if you have a question. Actually, I do see Dr. Jeffrey Hebron has typed a question. Is anyone connected to the Citizen Science Network? Is that part of the dashboard? I think the NC State reporting dashboard.
I'm not familiar with it. I mean, Dr. Satterwhite, or you?
Okay.
I'll
Maybe
look
that's,
into it.
Yeah.
yeah, that's
I
a
don't
good
think,
recommendation.
yeah, I don't know that we are, or that, yeah, I haven't seen it. I've come across this in trying to understand how different states are approaching this. And I feel like it's the work that Colleen Carl with the Chuan Edenton Environmental Group and Green Saves Green, it seems really similar to some of these. So they may be connected, and I don't really know.
Okay, great. Yeah, this would be a good resource for us to, or a good group to look into and learn more about. Any questions from the audience here? And you can take a minute to think about it and type them in the chat if you'd like, and I can move on. We do have a couple more questions for the panel. If no one has a immediate question from the audience. So we've talked about how individuals can get involved with HAB efforts, the research response. Is there anything else you want to add for individuals or universities, how they can collaborate with this group of people? And we can expand this beyond harmful algal blooms, thinking about just in general climate-related health threats in the coastal region.
I can jump in. So last November, I was part of an effort to put together an algal bloom summit, and this really truly was joint across many different groups. The North Carolina Office of Recovery and Resiliency and the Albemarle Pamlico National Estuarine Partnership. I think I saw some folks from there on the webinar today. Really did a lot of the work to pull it together and synthesize notes afterwards. But that was a one-day workshop. Or summit in Elizabeth City to pull together different researchers. So we had state, federal, folks from Duke, from UNC, from NC State, ECU. So getting a lot of people in the same room who were all coming at this from their different angles to try to just kind of come together and do a better job, being more collaborative. And then with this new NC State University Center, I think that there's a lot of great opportunities to get involved. And be involved in whatever sort of area that you're coming at it from. And I know one of the hopes from that summit was to try to develop a structure to have more of that collaboration, cooperation, talking about what do we know from the research, where are we now? What do we understand? What's that next direction to go in?
Go ahead, Ralph.
No, I was just going to say I appreciate everything that all you all have done with Dr. Satterwhite, Dr. Ward, Dr. Dello. I approached her, I guess it's been maybe 2 years back, and she jumped right on it, on talking to me about, because I just posed to her the concerns I had with climate, with the water table rising, and just algal bloom, just different issues that we were having. And she had, and the quick reaction, and I just want to thank everybody for all your help. And I tell you, to be honest, I could stand right here and do a survey, I think, because I've had 500 people walk by me since I've been standing
here. They're saying, what are you doing?
I mean, the beaches, I didn't realize there was so many people that like the beach. No, I did, but anyway.
Well, the current project we have for instrumentation in the pilot certified testing center, that's from the Duke Endowment, but it's the fifth of pillar of the Duke climate commitment. And our very first opportunity to work together was funded through a planning grant for the climate commitment. And we worked with Brian Silliman, who's at the Duke Marine Lab, and he's really interested. He has a Center for Wetland Resilience. He's really interested in using species to repair wetlands, and that can be plant or animal species. And that would be something. They have a lot of summer programs. I think that's one thing we need to always be thinking about. We're studying the problem and we're telling people that live there they're at risk. What are we going to do to help them? We have to have some kind of positive aspect to what we're doing. And the Duke Marine Lab and the climate commitment are really focused on that.
And I really feel like that Dr. Satterwhite or Joshua, y'all can chime in on this, but I really feel like that when we get this, when we learn how to use this AquaTrol and we can start flying this drone, and hopefully one day we'll have our own water testing lab, I feel like that we'll be a step above anybody else in the region. And it will be, hopefully it'll help us get ahead of this game.
Absolutely. I think that's great. And you all will be an excellent model for other people to learn from. Great. Well, thank you all. I also just added a link to the Albemarle Regional Health Services website, specifically the contact page. So folks can visit the ARHS website if you're interested in learning more about the wonderful work that the health department does. Great. Any closing thoughts or final comments from our panelists?
Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much for this whole program.
Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely. Okay, great. Well, I just wanted to remind everyone that the recordings for this webinar will be, or the recording for this particular webinar will be available on our website at carolinascap.com. And you will go to the events page on our website and you'll see the recording from this webinar as well as the recordings from all of our previous webinars. And as I said, this is the fourth and final webinar in our spring series. Stay tuned by visiting our website as well as our LinkedIn page where we post updates on our events and opportunities. And then also just to close, I know we shared a lot of links and resources throughout the webinar discussion today. So I just wanted to share my screen to kind of have those links available here on the screen real quick so people can jot them down if they want to. Meanwhile, while I'm pulling that up, if anyone wants to chime in with any questions, please feel free to do so now. Okay. Can everyone see that this Word document here with the links? That's visible to everyone?
Mhm.
Okay, great. Yeah, so we have here the C3HE website, the ARHS website, the state algal bloom dashboard where you can report sightings of the algal blooms. And then again, just a reminder about this new North Carolina Center for Coastal Algae, People and Environment is hiring a community engagement coordinator in collaboration with the C3HE team. So if you know anyone who's interested, please share this job posting. So I'll just leave this here so people can jot down any links if you're interested. But thank you so much to our panelists for being here today. And we really, really appreciate all the insights and information you were able to share with us today. Thank you to the audience for making time to be here. And I guess we'll go ahead and close out. I hope everyone enjoys the rest of their day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.